I am paying the rent, so I will make the rules. I like to take showers every morning, and I don't like the panties drying on the rod. And those words are from Neil Simon's The Goodbye Girl, which is what we'll be doing a commentary on tonight. Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gas Man live from New York City. I took a break last week. I decided to take a break, no commentaries at all. However, this summer, I plan on doing audio commentaries every Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, pretty much for the entire summer. Now, part of that is due to the fact that I'll be doing a project of sorts, which involves a dedication to Alan Ladd Jr., who was a very legendary producer in Hollywood. In fact, he gave the green light to George Lucas for Star Wars in 1977 for 20th Century Fox. So this summer, I'm going to be doing commentaries for 24 films, which were all distributed by the Ladd Company, which Alan Ladd Jr. had founded in 1979 after being ousted from Fox. So just to let you know, that will be a summer-long project, and it will, in fact, start with Chariots of Fire, the 1981 Best Picture winner, and it will culminate in Gone Baby Gone, the film directed by Ben Affleck and starring his brother Casey, which also served as Ben's directorial debut. However, for tonight, we're going to be doing an audio commentary for Neil Simon's The Goodbye Girl. This is a personal favorite of mine. I've seen it dozens of times since high school. And I was very glad when this Warner Archive Blu-ray came out, because even though this doesn't have any bonus features, I mean, the DVD didn't have bonus features either. But at any rate, I'm going to be watching the movie on Blu-ray. Hopefully, if you have it up, you can watch it at Amazon Prime. I got it paused at the Warner Brothers logo, and I think we will go ahead and get started here. I'm not expecting a big turnout tonight. It's really weird. I mean, I consider The Goodbye Girl still fairly popular, but then again, it's also 45 years old. So I can understand how it's not really in the consciousness now at any rate, despite the fact that we had a television remake maybe about 18 years ago with Jeff Daniels. I personally have never seen it, and I probably never will see it. I mean, like I said, it's one of those movies that I just can't see myself watching in an entire another version of it. Even though, look, I love Jeff Daniels, and I'm sure that it has its moments, but at the same time, I'm not going to bother with it at all. But at any rate, we're paused at the Warner Brothers logo for 1977's The Goodbye Girl, and we'll count down from 3, 2, 1, and play. And here we get going with Neil Simon's The Goodbye Girl. It's funny. I mean, whenever I announce these commentaries on like Twitter, I always say, this is the director's movie, which really it is. I mean, this is Herbert Ross's The Goodbye Girl, even though Neil Simon is part of the actual title. Ray Stark, we'll talk about him. He was head of the production company Rastar, which released a lot of great films in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But here we have Marsha Mason and Quinn Cummings playing her daughter, Lucy, right here. And this is New York in the 1970s. Hasn't really changed much. Although, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't mind just, hopping into a time machine and actually going all the way back to New York just to see, just to check it out up front, what it was really like. I mean, I remember my brother-in-law telling me, the 60s and 70s are just as the same as today, which, well, not really. I mean, there's a lot of differences, and I'd like to experience those differences sometime, but that will never happen, unfortunately. I first saw Marsha Mason. In fact, I mean, I haven't really seen a lot of movies in her filmography, but the movie that I know her from outside of Goodbye Girl the most would be the 1973 Mark Rydell film Cinderella Liberty, which is based on the novel by Daryl Ponnickson, where James Caan plays a first-class petty officer. He's a sailor in the Navy, and when he stops at port, I forget where it might have been Washington State, I think. Marshall Mason plays a prostitute that he falls in love with, and she has a black child. And that was based on a Daryl Ponnickson novel. Really good movie up until the ending. It's one of those movies where I really do applaud the authenticity in terms of capturing the Navy and capturing the lifestyles of the Navy at that time. The ending, which involves I'm not going to give it away, obviously, but the ending is a little bit far-fetched and a little difficult to buy. But otherwise, it's actually a really good movie. And Marsha Mason is very impressive in it. And in 1973, when Cinderella Liberty came out, that was the year that she and playwright Neil Simon met and fell in love and got married. And Neil Simon had already established himself on Broadway with stuff like The Odd Couple, and then eventually he would win the Pulitzer Prize for Lost in Yonkers, which Richard Dreyfuss came back for the film version in 1991. Or 93, excuse me. Just to say hi real quick to Joe Bob Tarheel in the chat. Great to see you, sir. David Gates did the title song, which peaked at number 11, I think. By the way, he was a member of Red. Yes, absolutely. I adore the David Gates song, which plays over the end credits. Absolutely adore it. I'm a huge Bread fan as well. I mean, they were essentially a staple of the 1970s. But, I'm still a massive fan of Bread and David Gates. And yes, we will talk more about the song when it comes to it. It plays over the end credits. But the music score for this film was actually done by Dave Grusin, who had done a number of films that I'm actually a huge fan of. Very soft, emotional scores, which suit the films well. He had started in 1967 when he scored The Graduate for Mike Nichols, and he went on to do films like The Heart is the Lonely Hunter, Winning, Adam at 6 a.m., Fuzz, The Midnight Man, The Yakuza, Murder by Death, The Front, The Goodbye Girl, obviously. Heaven Can Wait, My Bodyguard, which is a film that I saw again just very recently. David Grusin did the score for that. He also did Tootsie for director Sidney Pollack, the great 1980s comedy with Dustin Hoffman and Jessica Lange. He also did one of my favorite movies, Lucas, from the 1980s, along with The Goonies. You know what? The Goonies is probably Dave Grusin's biggest credit in his filmography. And then after that, he did The Fabulous Baker Boys, The Bonfire of the Vanities, and The Firm. And his last movie was actually a television movie for director Jay Roach called Recount, which was about the Florida vote recount of 2000 between Gore and Bush. But yeah, he's retired. He's in retirement now. He's now 87 years old. Luckily, I mean, unlike most films that I've done commentaries for from the 70s, pretty much all of the key players from The Goodbye Girl are still with us, aside from director Herbert Ross. And automatically we feel plight for her situation that her boyfriend, her actor boyfriend, just walked out on her and went to Italy to work with okay, they use the word Barlucci, but I think it's pretty safe to say that they're referring to the director Bertolucci, Bernardo Bertolucci, who had just done Last Tango in Paris about 4 years before this with Marlon Brando, which became the subject of an obscenity trial, believe it or not, where they wanted to actually arrest Marlon Brando for appearing in that movie. But yeah, like I said, Marsha Mason and Neil Simon, the playwright, they were married for uh, 10 years. I mean, they were married from 1973 to 1983. And Herbert Ross was married before, but sadly, his first wife died of bone cancer at the age of 41. And but like I said, in 1973, he met and fell in love with Marsha Mason. And I like Marsha Mason in this role. I mean, I've shown this movie to a number of people over the years, and look, her character takes time to like. Her character does take time to get used to, because in the beginning, she's very the way she treats Richard Dreyfuss, despite the fact that he was really a victim of circumstance in this whole thing. She just, but you understand, she has a kid to look after, so I mean, it makes perfect sense. But here she finds out from her landlady that her boyfriend, before he decided to ditch town, he subletted the apartment to a Chicago actor. Well, we're about to find out it's a Chicago actor, but I just want no trouble in my building. Exactly. I like the landlady, but we never see her again. I mean, lovely little cute role for that actress, but we never see her again, sadly. And destroying all the pictures of 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 the ex-boyfriend, going on that rampage that we've been on before. I've always liked this when she rips half the picture and then she's like, "Oh, screw it." It's like, why even bother? I mean, if you want to get rid of every single little thing that reminds you of this guy, and we only see Tony DeForest in terms of photographs. We never met the guy. I mean, we only know of his character secondhand. I mean, we never even get a phone call from him. I mean, he literally is a ghost in this movie. I mean, uh, he was with Paula for maybe about 2 years, starting when Lucy, the daughter, was 8 years old, and now she's 10. But here we have the great Richard Dreyfuss, one of my personal favorite actors of all time. Now, of course, he had already been a megastar at this time because of George Lucas's American Graffiti and Steven Spielberg's Jaws, and for great reason. Uh, he's an actor that started out in the early '70s, and I better. It's amazing. I've seen most of his films, believe it or not. I've seen actually a good majority of Richard Dreyfuss's films, and yet I still have to double check as far as that's right. Okay. In 1967, he made his film debut in two landmark films. Two landmark films. First, he did Valley of the Dolls for 20th Century Fox, which it isn't a great movie, but at the same time, I mean, it's based on the Jacqueline Suzanne novel, and it had a score by John Williams, a very early score by John Williams, and Richard Dreyfuss actually has a speaking part in it. He's a stagehand who is trying to get the lead actress to come out of her dressing room. I forget if it was Patty Duke or one of the other actresses, but yeah, that was technically his first film. But that same year, he was also in Mike Nichols' The Graduate, which, like I said, we just mentioned. Dave Grusin also did the music score for that as well. And in that movie, it's a great cameo. I mean, if you want to call it that, because he plays a Berkeley rooming student, and he shows up as just another student dormitory that Dustin Hoffman is staying in. And Norman Fell, who played the head of the building, he comes in and he tells Dustin Hoffman that he wants him out of there. He's not really a student, and to be perfectly honest, I mean, he really went there just to stalk Catherine Ross. I mean, let's keep it real here. But Richard Dreyfuss just pops up out of nowhere and asks if he could call the police on Dustin Hoffman, and you will never ever see Dustin Hoffman or Richard Dreyfuss on screen together ever again. It actually happened in 1967 in The Graduate, but we never see them again. And then after that, he did two other movies called The Young Runaways and Hello Down There in the late 60s. And then finally, he got American Graffiti, which he was nominated for the Golden Globe for. But I must confess, of all the characters in American Graffiti, his is actually my least favorite. Now, I understand, that George Lucas wrote him as the guy that we're supposed to identify with the most in terms of, should I leave? Should I not leave? And, he goes to visit Wolfman Jack, which is a spiritually enlightening moment for him. I get all that. I don't care for his character. And I'm actually with Richard Dreyfuss completely on the documentary for American Graffiti, because to this day, he always hated that shirt that he wore in the movie. And you know what? I said the same thing. Richard, you're right. I can't stand that shirt either. I would have complained to George. According to my non-waterproof watch. But I mean, Richard Dreyfuss had built up to this moment. I mean, in terms of, American Graffiti, he was technically the lead actor, although that was an ensemble. Let's be clear about that. And Jaws, he acted opposite Robert Shaw and Roy Scheider, but he is the full-blown lead in The Goodbye Girl. And it obviously helped in the same year because he was also in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And that obviously fueled his Oscar campaign, because he would eventually win Best Actor in a Motion Picture. He would win the Oscar for Best Actor for The Goodbye Girl. And of course, as many people know, as many fans of The Goodbye Girl are well aware, that Neil Simon himself kind of foreshadowed that in script. And we'll hear that later on. Okay, now, we just missed it, but, Paula was trying to get rid of Elliot, basically by saying that her husband was Charlie D'Agostino in Homicide. Well, look, I had seen this movie dozens of times since I was a teenager, and I laugh, quite frequently at every single thing, even though this is a film from the 70s and this was made before I was born, and obviously I didn't get all the references, because when I moved to New York City, I found out that D'Agostino's was a grocery store. It's a chain of grocery outlets across the city. So I laughed at that because I thought to myself, oh, that's where she got the name of D'Agostino. Yeah, that was a revelation for me. I was like, okay, so she didn't just make that up out of her head. She actually got that from a name of a grocery store chain in New York City. And obviously, Elliot Garfield, being from Chicago, would have no idea what D'Agostino's is. And, he almost buys it, but he's smart enough to call and check. He's smart enough to actually check out Paula's information and just, it's like, okay, this woman is full of shit. I need to find out what's going on here. Tripping on your rug, yes. Richard Dreyfuss enters the apartment, for which they will share over the duration of the movie. After American Graffiti, Richard Dreyfuss had done Dillinger, The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz, which I've never seen that before, and The Second Coming of Suzanne, which I have seen, which is a pretty horrible Fellini-like movie where Dreyfuss becomes obsessed with his female star. And then he was in a movie called The Inserts as the Boy Wonder, which is about actors and directors in the early 1930s who are unable to make the transition to silent film to talkies, so they start making pornography. And Richard Dreyfuss, his character is called the Boy Wonder in that. I'm not going to speculate as to what exactly the pornography in the movie implies, but because I've never seen it. But like I said, after that he did Jaws for Spielberg, which of course was the #1 movie of 1975. And then he did Close Encounters in 1977. Although Goodbye Girl came out months after Close Encounters was a huge hit over the summer. But by that time, I mean, Dreyfuss's reputation as a serious dramatic actor who the audience can fall in love with and view as an everyman, all that was perfectly established with American Graffiti, Jaws, and Close Encounters. Those 3 films, that trifecta, had set everything up for Dreyfuss. And thus, The Goodbye Girl was obviously the perfect time for him to win that award. And he was only 29. Up until Adrian Brody won for The Pianist, he was really the youngest actor to ever win Best Actor. Although I got to be honest, he looks a little older than 29 in this movie. I mean, you see the gray hairs beginning to come in and everything. I mean, I keep thinking, in less than 10 years, he's going to be in like Down and Out in Beverly Hills and Stakeout and Tin Men. And he already had pretty much white hair at that time. But me personally, despite the fact I love Richard Dreyfuss in practically everything, I still think his finest performance on screen is in a little seen, very obsolete movie from 1981 called Whose Life Is It Anyway? It's based on a television movie from the 70s and a play by Brian Clark. And he plays a sculptor. He plays somebody that uses his hands on a daily basis and creates sculptures and everything. And he winds up in a horrific car accident where he becomes pretty much paralyzed, completely paralyzed. He becomes a quadriplegic. And, after 6 months in a hospital, he decides that he no longer wants to live because, being a sculptor, all the work that he did was in his hands. Everything that he put into his work in his life and his career was in his hands. And because his hands were essentially dead, he decided that he just didn't want to live anymore. And he wanted to be released from the hospital so he could essentially, be put in a room somewhere and die. And he actually gets a lawyer and he fights the hospital staff, which include John Cassavetes, the director, and Christine Lottie. I will be doing a commentary on Whose Life Is It Anyway sometime. I still have to see the television movie and also read the play. But that is without a doubt my favorite Dreyfuss performance. But the great irony about that movie and his performance in it is that because of his cocaine addiction, which nearly took his life, by the way. I mean, he actually crashed into a pole in 1980, 1981, around the time he was filming Whose Life Is It Anyway, and nearly died. And so at that point, he got into rehab and he cleaned up and he made a Hollywood comeback in the 1980s. But the irony is he doesn't remember a thing from the shoot of Whose Life Is It Anyway. And like I said, magnificent performances. He only moves his head. He only moves his head throughout the whole movie. And it's just magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. This is probably my favorite line in the Goodbye Girl about the panties drying on the rod. and as you can, I mean, this is very reminiscent of like screwball comedy where, his dialogue is delivered at like lightning quick. He really shoots these words at Paula McFadden. I sleep in the nude. Above all, winter and summer, rain or snow with the windows open. It's a great little mini monologue right here as they set down all the rules as to how this arrangement is going to be in terms of and I remember, there's a lot of fans of this movie on Twitter that I've noticed that remember it very fondly and everything. This is the kind of plot that almost is like it almost can do no wrong. I mean, the idea is, it's very much in line with the sexual revolution at the time. All this stuff is very reminiscent of that. The battle of the sexes, essentially, where these two opposites are brought together under most unusual circumstances, and they're forced to share a living situation or a social situation with each other, and their relationship builds over the course of the movie. And as Richard Dreyfuss promised, he's playing the guitar in the middle of the night, and he did warn her. He did absolutely warn her, that, hey, I will be playing the guitar, and I will be naked. And here again, Neil Simon's brilliance as a writer really shines through, I think, even more so in the characters than the dialogue, because I love that little moment like there where she's so exasperated, but her daughter is actually doing perfectly fine. I mean, the music actually helped her go to sleep, and she remained sound asleep throughout the whole thing. So Elliot's about to get an ally here. Of course he's naked. He warned you. He warned you. I also happen to be naked. Forces herself to look at him in the eyes. Yeah, I don't know how to play pills. And of course, we find out that he's an all natural guy. He sticks to, organic, natural foods and everything, and doesn't put unnatural things in his body, including pills. Yeah, I love that. No, just take 2 sleeping pills and stick one in each ear. Now, Neil Simon had already, been writing plays on Broadway. He won the Tony Award for the Odd Couple in 1969, which became a very successful movie with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. But in actuality, Neil Simon had started writing in the 1950s for the Phil Silvers Show and stuff like that. And, he would be, with a bunch of up and comers like Woody Allen and Norman Lear. And they would, be involved in television at that time. But mostly he made his mark in the theater. Now, his very first play was Come Blow Your Horn in 1961, which was later made into a film with Frank Sinatra. But he was so disappointed by that film version, he realized, maybe I should adapt my own plays to the screen to make sure they're done to my satisfaction, and that's what he largely did. I especially love that line right there. The double meaning of incense. What is incense? Oh, it's what I'm feeling right now. Yes, exactly. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I find Marsha Mason attractive. I do like the short hair and everything. Although it's just really weird because she looks older than Dreyfuss. It's really bizarre. When I was a teenager, I was trying to figure out. I mean, how old are these people? I'm like, I mean, are they in their 30s? Because I honestly just can't tell. But here again, opposites. You know, they're completely opposite physically and everything. I mean, they're completely opposites in every single way. I've been in musicals that haven't had that much music. But among Neil Simon's many other works, because I mean he wrote a series of plays which were all later made into movies. I mean Biloxi Blues, which was later made with Matthew Broderick. He and Herbert Ross, I mean they collaborated on 5 films alone. If you remember, they did Max Dugan Returns. They got back together for Chapter 2 with Marsha Mason. I Ought to Be in Pictures with Walter Matthau. And of course, right after The Goodbye Girl, Herbert Ross did California Suite, which is the ensemble comedy. And in the theater, he did a play called Sweet Charity, which was later filmed in 1969 by writer-director Bob Fosse. It was his very first movie. And while I think it's the weakest of the 5 movies that he did, I mean, it's still very much worth watching, especially if you're a Shirley MacLaine fan. But he also did the Sunshine Boys in 1972. The Prisoner of Second Avenue in 1971. That was later made into a movie with Jack Lemmon. And in fact, in 1999, even though Neil Simon and Marsha Mason were divorced by that time, he and Marsha and Richard Dreyfuss all were reunited to do a new version of The Prisoner of Second Avenue. And in fact, Richard Dreyfuss and Marsha Mason have even worked together in the theater since that time. So they've been collaborators on stage for a number of times over the years since The Goodbye Girl. So obviously they still very much enjoy working together. I mean, I like the tomboyish look here for Marsha Mason. I mean, in Cinderella Liberty, she had much longer hair and actually almost looks like a completely different person there. But I mean, I dig the short hair. I really do. So she has to get back into the world of dancing, which was, basically all the experience that she had before, going up to an actor like a regular groupie and then moving in with him within a couple weeks and became happy, as she says. you know. Yeah, the joys of trying to make it in New York City as a actor or a dancer or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's a grind, and not everybody has what it takes. He's like, I thought you gave all this up. What the hell? Yeah, I just picked up the wrong one to give it up for. Yeah. Written test. Yeah, right. But Neil Simon, he also did Brighton Beach Memoirs, which was later filmed in 1986. Chapter 2 is interesting in that was actually based on Marsha Mason's and Neil Simon's relationship until they got married in 1973. And then, of course, as far as screenplays are concerned, he wrote The Heartbreak Kid for Charles Grodin and director Elaine May. Which I will be doing a commentary on later this year. Absolutely. The Lonely Guy with Steve Martin. Last of the Red Hot Lovers. The Sunshine Boys. Seems Like Old Times, which was a very popular comedy that came out in 1980 with Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn. very much reminiscent of the screwball comedies of that time. But it wasn't quite as successful as something like What's Up, Doc? Okay, I'll work on it. Now, here we have the Richard III cast, which, of course, is the reason why Elliot Garfield moved out to New York City in the first place, was to do a version of Richard III off Broadway. Now, the gentleman that you see there smoking a cigarette, in fact, he just lit another cigarette right there. I mean, continuity, Herbert Ross. No, I'm just kidding. But you see him there, he's smoking a cigarette. He is actually the star of the very controversial movie Cannibal Holocaust, which came out only a couple years after The Goodbye Girl. Robert Kerman is his name. Now, he doesn't have any lines here, but well, I mean, that's inaudible, but yeah, he doesn't have any lines, but that's Robert Kerman. But he was also a pornographic actor, and he also starred in Debbie Does Dallas, which, of course, the Dallas cheerleaders had famously sued over the use of their likenesses and everything, even though it was not set in Dallas at all. The funny thing is that I remember I was cruising YouTube reviews, like the old Siskel and Ebert reviews. They actually reviewed Debbie Does Dallas for Chicago Public Television, which is amazing. And speaking of public television, this actor who plays the director of the Richard III production, this guy, I remember when I first saw this in high school, and I thought, God, he looks so familiar. And I had no idea that he was, in fact, on Sesame Street. He played a character on Sesame Street called the Number Painter, where he would just paint a number between 0 and 9 somewhere along the way. I mean, like Sesame Street, where you get these little bits, these little short films, these little misadventures. He would just go around and like paint a 6 somewhere, or paint us an 8 or a 9 somewhere, anywhere that he went. He was like a nuisance. But of course, being Sesame Street, it was all meant to teach kids about the numbering system and everything. But I really liked him here. He's very funny in this role as the director of this Richard III play, which they want to make very gay-centric, I guess you could say, give it a little bit more pizzazz in terms of that. I am not a Richard III expert. In fact, I'm not really a Shakespearean expert by any stretch. I have never seen Richard III on stage, and I don't think I've seen either of the movie versions with Laurence Olivier and Ian McKellen. There was a version that came out in 1995 with Ian McKellen. However, I have seen the Al Pacino film, which he directed, called Looking for Richard, where it's actually, I got to look that up again real quick because I haven't seen that movie in like 30 years, but I remember it being really good. And Al Pacino got a lot of serious critical praise at the time. I mean, yeah, it has Alec Baldwin, Aidan Quinn, Winona Ryder, and Kevin Spacey, and he plays both himself and Richard III. The film guides the audience through the play's plot and historical background. Pacino and several fellow actors act out scenes from the play. In addition, the actors comment on their roles. Pacino features other actors famous for performing Shakespeare, such as Vanessa Redgrave, Kenneth Branagh, John Gielgud, Derek Jacobi, James Earl Jones, and Kevin Kline. Pacino includes interviews with Shakespeare scholars such as Barbara Everett, as well as ordinary people on the street. So I barely remember watching Looking for Richard, but I remember liking it a lot. Yeah, I mean, you might as well take Lady Anne home and do a couple scenes with her, see how that works out. And of course, Quinn Cummings, who plays Lucy here, she already knows what's up. She already knows what's up. She's been through in this situation before, obviously. I'll bet. Yeah. I always like that Lipton shirt that she has on. What it says on there, molten lava or something. I mean, it's really weird. The old Coke cans with the old where you actually rip off the tabs on top and everything. That's really weird. Now, we haven't really talked about Quinn Cummings yet here. But she was only in 2 films in her entire career. She was in films. She's only did 2 films. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for this, as was Marsha Mason nominated for Best Actress. But Quinn Cummings, she would only end up doing one other film, and that would be Listen to Me, written and directed by Douglas Day Stewart, who also wrote An Officer and a Gentleman and The Blue Lagoon. Now, I've never seen Listen to Me, and to be perfectly honest, I never will, because the star of the movie is Kirk Cameron. And I think that's all you need to know as far as, I will never, ever watch Listen to Me just because I cannot stand that guy, Kirk Cameron. A gifted and rising young actress. Yes. I love how all this is shot, by the way, with Lady Anne literally between Richard Dreyfuss and Marsha Mason there for a moment. Like, I think that was very intentional on the part of the director. But Quinn Cummings, she had also done a number of television shows. Like she did 36 episodes of the television show Family from 1976. That's pretty much all, though. I mean, she was in an episode of Remington Steele. She was on the Love Boat and Blossom, which was her last one. And she's put out a number of books since then, and she's become very successful as a entrepreneur. And I found out on Twitter that unfortunately she's one of those that only seems to tweet about politics, which is kind of a disappointment. But I'll always love her in The Goodbye Girl. But it's really weird because considering how little she's done on stage and screen, I actually have a little story to share about seeing Quinn Cummings in something else. Because I remember when I used to write for DVD Verdict back in the day, about 15 years ago. What would happen is that we would get these DVDs in the mail directly from the distribution companies, and instead of being paid to write reviews on them, basically we get brand new Blu-rays and brand new DVDs direct from the distributor. So I remember in my mailbox, just out of the blue one day, I got the Best of Family Feud, the video game, the game show from the 1980s with Richard Dawson, where they would do a survey, and then the family would have to guess what was on that survey in order to win the whole game. Well, this was a very special Family Feud set because it was essentially the best of all-star Family Feud. So it was all celebrities doing Family Feud for charity. And wouldn't you know, Quinn Cummings was part of one of the families. They weren't really real families. I mean, they were all celebrities that were just kind of grouped together, and they each had a specific charity that they were playing for. And Quinn Cummings was a part of that. And one of the topics, I still remember this to this day because it's so funny. But one of the topics that the quote unquote family was surveyed on was What would you do? I don't remember the exact wording, but I remember it involved uh, being drunk, drinking alcohol, and driving while intoxicated. And so the second or third time that Richard Dawson came around to Quinn Cummings to ask her that question, she just says, and she's so adorable. She just says, "I don't know. I've never been drunk." And I'm like, I thought, why are they asking this little girl these questions when it's not really fair and it's not really appropriate? Okay, I mean, the thing is, they kind of assumed that all the family members would have been quote unquote drunk at one point, and it's just like, Quinn Cummings, she's still only like 11, 12 years old, and I found it so adorable and innocent and everything. It's just like, oh wow. I would be hard. I wonder, I mean, if I ever met Quinn Cummings in person, I would probably ask her, do you remember that? But I completely sided with her. It's like, come on. You don't ask an 11, 12-year-old girl, in front of millions of people. You're like, so what did you do when you were drunk? Like someone. Here again, I don't remember the exact wording or what the exact topic was, but I remember that just being absolutely weird. But speaking of weird, here's the director of Richard III, Paul Benedict, sitting down with Richard Dreyfuss, who was obviously getting a little too weirded out, trying to apply an effeminate nature to this role that has been around for centuries and has worked for centuries without really any gay overtones. But and it sets up what is probably Roger Ebert actually cited the entire Richard III performance in this movie as the funniest of its kind since Springtime for Hitler in Mel Brooks's The Producers, and he's probably absolutely right about that. There's no doubt Richard was gay. I was like, was he? It's like, does that really matter? Here again, I'm not a Richard III expert. I'm really not. But to be perfectly honest, if I was going to dive into Richard III, the first thing I would watch is that Al Pacino movie, Looking for Richard. Now, I don't know if this is actually D'Agostino's The Grocery Store, but I'm almost compelled to think that it is. Here again, I mean, anybody outside of New York would never, ever have picked that up. So here they're beginning to get a little more used to each other. They're, trying to work out, the situation that they're in, which is, not unbearable, but it's certainly, weird. It's she finds him very bizarre in terms of his, his eating habits and his, his guitar habits and his, to her, all that stuff would be habits, but to him, it's just like, well, and I'm just living my life the way I want to live my life. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, meditating with burning incense or any of that stuff, All right, now the liquor store salesman you should probably all recognize because he was in Die Hard 2, if you remember. I'm trying to remember his name. It's Costanzo, if I'm not mistaken. Robert Costanzo. Yes, that's the guy's name. He's still with us. He's 79 years old now. But this was his very first movie. Sorry. No, I take that back. His very first movie was an uncredited role as a New York policeman in The Taking of Pelham 123, which is a excellent crime thriller of the 1970s. But he was also in Saturday Night Fever. He played a customer in the paint store that John Travolta worked at. He was also in Fatso. the Anne Bancroft movie, and City Slickers. Most people also know him from City Slickers, because he plays one of the fathers in the beginning that shows up to Billy Crystal's son's class, and his butt crack is showing, and he brags about having superhuman strength, where he saved this woman's life and everything. But yeah, that's Robert Costanzo in a little bit role there. Yeah, it just keeps losing groceries everywhere. But what's great about all this is that this is all played for laughs, obviously, but soon it's about to completely turn on a dime when that Dave Grusin score kicks in, and we actually do completely understand and empathize with Marsha Mason's financial situation here. Yeah, just in the middle of broad daylight, it's like all they had to do was keep driving. Like that's all they had to do. Well, at least they didn't take any of the groceries. I mean, that's Oh, Dying Breed. Wonderful to see you, sir. Stopping by to show support and say hello. Thank you very much. I loved him in Mr. Holland's Opus. Yes. Yeah, Mr. Holland's Opus is another film that Richard Dreyfuss did that it was very good. But, I love him in almost everything. I mean, Stakeout, What About Bob? And he's still working. He's still plugging away. I would love, and I know I'm going to say this right outright because I've been thinking about, I'm not much of a writer, but man, I have an idea for a Jaws movie, which would serve as a great retirement role for Richard Dreyfuss if he was willing to do it. But the idea I have, I don't even have it on paper. So it's like, well, yeah, why do I have such lousy luck every time an actor comes into my life? Oh, man. But, of course, he knows how to come back with the truth. And he says, I don't think they robbed you because I'm an actor. But that Dave Grusin score, it's like the frosting on the cake. It's perfectly laid on. Perfectly laid on. Let me do a timestamp here real quick. We are approximately 49 minutes into the Goodbye Girl. So we have about an hour left here. Like I said, I hope everyone is having a great week and had a great Memorial Day weekend. The classic Kraft Parmesan cheese. Yeah, I remember my mother got that for years. I mean, every time she would make spaghetti. And here, Richard Dreyfuss is of course, his character is talking about, everything he did before he came to New York City. He taught drama for a year. He played Puck on stage. He did, stuff like On the Town and stuff like that. And in the meantime, you can tell by Marsha Mason's behavior here that she is trying to figure out a way to get out of her financial situation, and thus she resorts in desperation to ask Richard Dreyfuss for money. It's like I like how he's eating a salad and she's eating the chocolate pudding, Like the salad was actually Dreyfuss's dessert. Tuesday's a school night. Yeah, exactly. Oh no. We went to Tony's opening on a school night. I mean, come on. Yeah, how did that end up? Well, it's really weird because I mean, Lucy doesn't really have any ill will towards Tony. I mean, not the same way that Paul McFadden has, obviously, but here she has to negotiate with him and everything. Like, yeah, would you like half of my bed? Well, that's it's tempting, but no. Yeah. I would imagine that a lot of people that move to New York City go through this at one point or another. And remember, this is 1977. I mean, nowadays, I mean, it's almost impossible to afford a one bedroom apartment on your own in New York. It's practically impossible, particularly in Manhattan. I remember when I was looking at, possibly sharing a Manhattan apartment at one time. I mean, you would have to share it with two other people and have to pay $1,000 a month. I mean, that pretty much tells you, yeah, I mean, it's not cheap to live in New York. It is definitely not cheap. And kudos to the production designer, who made this apartment out well with all these Broadway posters and stuff like that. Lots of things that celebrate the arts, and it goes along with Paul McFadden's obsession with actors and everything. Now, we should talk about the producer of this movie for a little bit. The producer of the Goodbye Girl was a man by the name of Ray Stark, one of the most successful and prolific independent film producers in post-war Hollywood. Let's see. He started out as an executive on The World of Susie Wong in 1960, and then eventually became a producer of films such as The Night of the Iguana in 1964, Reflections in the Golden Eye, based on the Carson McCullers novel starring Marlon Brando. And then, of course, Ray Stark would also produce Funny Girl, which was, of course, directed by William Wyler. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he would also do The Owl and the Pussycat, which was also directed by Herbert Ross and starring Barbara Streisand. Fat City, which I will be doing a commentary on later this year, the John Huston movie. Funny Lady, The Sunshine Boys, Robin and Marion, Murder by Death, The Goodbye Girl, Chapter 2, The Electric Horseman. Somewhere in Time is probably my all-time favorite movie from producer Ray Stark, and that one stars Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour, based on the the book Bid Time Return by Richard Matheson, where Christopher Reeve becomes obsessed with this actress from 1912 and basically travels back in time through his mind to meet her, and it's become one of the biggest cult romances of the past 40 years. As a matter of fact, it completely bombed in the theater, and it became a beloved hit many years later. So much that they actually do a actual convention on the island every single year in honor of Somewhere in Time. Ray Stark would also produce Seems Like Old Times, which of course Neil Simon wrote. He also did Annie, the 1982 version of Annie, which had Albert Finney and Carol Burnett. And he also did Richard Donner's The Toy, which is probably, I hate The Toy. I couldn't even finish watching it. I'm not even going to go into that. But The Slugger's Wife, Brighton Beach Memoirs, Biloxi Blues, those all three of those written by Neil Simon. Steel Magnolias, and the very last movie he produced was Lost in Yonkers, which was the play that Neil Simon ultimately got the Pulitzer Prize for, And of course, that film starred Richard Dreyfuss. But he was also a production executive on West Side Story, of all things, the 1961 version of West Side Story. And the cinematographer of The Goodbye Girl was David M. Walsh, and he worked with Woody Allen and Herbert Ross and Arthur Hiller over the years. Started working as an assistant animation cameraman in the Walt Disney Studios in the 1950s. Became a camera operator on numerous big budget films in the 60s. In 1970, he would do a film called I Walk the Line, directed by John Frankenheimer. That was one of his first films. He also did Evel Knievel, Everything You Always Want to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, the Woody Allen film, which I will also be doing a audio commentary on in August. And he also shot the controversial Linda Blair movie called Born Innocent, where she is a teenager from a broken family, and she endures so much worse in the juvenile justice system, where it actually had a rape scene for primetime television. That's unheard of, especially at that time in 1974. But David M. Walsh would also shoot The Other Side of the Mountain, Roller Coaster in 1977, Silver Streak, which was a great Hitchcockian thriller directed by Arthur Hiller. The In-Laws, Chapter 2, Seems Like Old Times, obviously. He also shot Private Benjamin, the great Goldie Hawn movie. Unfaithfully Yours, Teachers, Johnny Dangerously, Outrageous Fortune. And one of his last films was Carpool in 1996 with Tom Arnold. But he's retired now. He's now 90 years old and very much retired. I mean, like I said, pretty much everybody is still with us except for the director, Herbert Ross, which, amazingly enough, I mean, Herbert Ross did a number of movies with Neil Simon, including Chapter 2 and Max Dugan Returns. However, 1977 also proved to be a huge year for Herbert Ross, because his film The Turning Point, which was about ballerinas, got 11 Academy Award nominations. But it didn't win any. Goodbye Girl got Best Actor, but Turning Point didn't get any. After Max Dugan Returns in 1983, he directed a smash hit film for Paramount called Footloose. Yep, the little dance picture called Footloose with Kevin Bacon in it. And then he did Steel Magnolias. And but to be perfectly honest, the two movies that I love, along with The Goodbye Girl, that Herbert Ross did, I also have Blu-rays for both of these movies. The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox. That was produced and directed by Herbert Ross in 1987. As well as My Blue Heaven, which is it's essentially the sequel to Goodfellas, with Steve Martin and Rick Moranis showing Henry Hill's adventures in the Witness Protection Program. But Herbert Ross also produced that movie, and it was written by Nora Ephron, the wife of the screenwriter of Goodfellas, and executive produced by Goldie Hawn. Very funny movie if you've never seen it. But here we have the legendary Richard III performance by Richard Dreyfuss. I don't know what the hell he's wearing here, but I mean, this takes skill. Okay, I mean, you can't. You have to give a bad Shakespeare performance. That does take effort. That takes major concentration and effort right here. I've always loved the ass pinch right here. Oh. Oh, thank you, my lord. The severed head. My soul recorded the history. Oh yeah, the audience is genuinely impressed. Really is. Now I don't know why it's all red right now. I mean, the lighting of this play is also really, really bizarre. Uh-oh. That's all you need. What, just one shot of a critic writing on a pad of paper. That's all you need to know. You know that this is going to be completely trashed in the papers by the next day. Yeah, I don't think the mother was that impressed with it. Try to force a reaction out of that. It's just I kind of wish the Richard III sequence was a little longer, but yeah, I mean, there's really not much to it. But of course, here again, like with the spaghetti scene, it's all about the dramatic moment afterward, which could be very, very moving and can sneak up on you. And here, Richard Dreyfuss's facial reactions are, in a way, kind of heartbreaking because you know exactly what's coming, and that it's not going to be it's not going to be flattering, it's not going to be pretty. He knows deep down he's about to be demolished by the New York theater critics. He feels it in his blood, and he just, after all that he's worked for up until this point. I mean, like that whole spaghetti scene with at the dinner table where he goes through like everything he's accomplished up until now, his work and his contribution to the theater and his dedication to the theater. It's now come all to a head. So yeah, naturally he comes home very, very drunk. Now, I forgot to mention, the interesting thing is I don't think that Richard Dreyfuss himself ever did Richard III, but Marsha Mason was actually in a Richard Papp production of Richard III in 1974. So she has experience on stage with Richard III, but ironically enough, not Richard Dreyfuss. At least I don't think so. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, Marsha Mason was actually in a Richard III production right before they shot the movie, which is crazy. I never listen to critics. Yeah, probably. What was that? Richard III production a disaster too? No, she's not speaking from personal experience, or is she? Remember, Neil Simon wrote this, and they tended to add like, no. Paula McFadden, the character, has nothing to do with Marsha Mason. I know that full well. Chapter 2 is the one that's like a quasi autobiography between them about their relationship up until the time they got married. But kill me with panache. Yes. And as you can see, okay, look, I'm gonna confess this right now. The Goodbye Girl is on a rather short list. It's on a rather short list of what I think are the greatest romantic comedies ever brought to the screen. Um, I think that the great grandfather of the genre is, in fact, It Happened One Night, directed by Frank Capra and starring Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert. That is really the it wasn't the first romantic comedy, but it was seriously the one where all the cliches that we know from romantic comedies came from It Happened One Night. And deservedly, it won Best Picture, it won Best Actor, Actress, and Screenplay, and Director. It was the very first film to win all 5 major Academy Awards. After that, I would also have His Girl Friday, Roman Holiday, the Audrey Hepburn, Gregory Peck movie, as well as The Apartment, directed by Billy Wilder. Along with Annie Hall, I would also, along with The Goodbye Girl, I would also include Woody Allen's Annie Hall with Diane Keaton, The Sure Thing with John Cusack, and surprisingly enough, I know that this is going to shock a few people, but I would also include on that romantic comedy list the Adam Sandler film 50 First Dates, as well as Forgetting Sarah Marshall. But the last film I added to the list was as a matter of fact, another Judd Apatow production called The Big Sick, which I highly, highly recommend. That's a great movie with Zoe Kazan. And here again, The Goodbye Girl, it's not based on a play, but you could tell that you could see this done on the stage. You could probably see this done on the stage very, very easily. Now, like I said, I've never seen the television remake version with Jeff Daniels. But here again, I can't imagine it being nearly as good as this version. Because here again, this movie has the sneaky it has this sneaky way of making you laugh uncontrollably for a few minutes, and then just turning everything onto a dime, where we actually care about the characters, we find them very human, we find them very real, and we eventually root for Paula and Elliot to get together as a couple. We eventually root for this couple. And here again, with romantic comedies, it's all about the chemistry, and it's all about the, just make it as realistic as possible, is what I like to say. If you're going to do cliches, you can do cliches well, but you got to make sure you have some kind of chemistry between the two actors. Otherwise, what's the point of even trying? And The Goodbye Girl, this particular movie had a very interesting pre-production history, because basically the film began as a screenplay called Bogart Slept Here, which is essentially the story of what happened to Dustin Hoffman after he became a star. Now, there's a little connection with that, because like I said earlier, one of Richard Dreyfuss's very first films was, in fact, The Graduate, where he appeared in the Berkeley rooming house, where he asked Norman Fell if he should call the police on Dustin Hoffman and have him arrested. So it goes along with that. However, the movie was originally supposed to star Marsha Mason in the role of Paula McFadden and Robert De Niro in the Elliot Garfield role. Now, who knows what that would have been like? I mean, I don't know if Robert De Niro and Marsha Mason would have had the chemistry that she has with Richard Dreyfuss. I just don't know. I can't see Robert De Niro warm up to Quinn Cummings. I just can't see that. I can't see Robert De Niro doing that. With Richard Dreyfuss, I can totally buy Quinn Cummings having a crush on him. I can totally buy that. I cannot buy Quinn Cummings having a crush on Robert De Niro. I'm sorry, I just don't. Oh, and here we get the bad news. Well, the quote unquote bad news that apparently the play is now done. It's over with. They're not going to do it anymore, and the critics pretty much ended the show, which Richard Dreyfuss is actually rather relieved by. He doesn't have to do that performance ever again, so he's actually kind of grateful. But of course, now he has to look for another job. The Goodbye Girl, if it had Robert De Niro, it would have been made right after Taxi Driver, which of course he made with Scorsese in 1976. Neil Simon recalled the original idea for The Goodbye Girl. The basic idea of the story was that Marsha, an ex-dancer, was married to a very promising but struggling off-Broadway actor who gets discovered in a small play and is whisked out to Hollywood, where he reluctantly moves in with his family. He feels very out of place there, and they have trouble adjusting, especially after his first film makes him an international star, and it creates chaos in their marriage. The story was coming out a little darker than I had imagined, but I envisioned the character of the wife as a very good role for Marsha. Filming began on Bogart Slept Here, but it became apparent that De Niro just wasn't right for the role. Simon recalled, "It was clear that any of the humor I had written was going to get lost. It's not that De Niro is not funny, but his humor comes mostly from his nuances, a bemused expression on his face, or the way he would look at a character, smile, and then look up at the ceiling." Nichols insisted on recasting De Niro, and then soon after, Mike Nichols left the project. Richard Dreyfuss was brought in to audition with Marsha Mason. At the end of the reading, Simon decided the chemistry was there, but the script needed work. He rewrote the screenplay in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The screenplay had to be funnier. It had to be more romantic, the way Marsha and I first imagined the picture would be. What I wanted to do was a prequel. In other words, instead of an off-Broadway actor married with a child, why don't I start from the beginning? I'd start when they first meet, not liking each other at first, and then falling in love. The film's exteriors were filmed in New York City, and the interiors were shot on sets in Los Angeles, like this one right here. Warner Brothers was less than enthused about Simon's script and considered selling the project to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, but the studio ultimately decided to partner with MGM on the film instead. Little unusual. So this is a film that was distributed by both Warner Brothers and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, but it was filmed at the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer studios in New York City. And then with the acquisition of Turner Entertainment, which owned the pre-May 1986 MGM Film Library by Time Warner, Warner Brothers now completely owns the rights and the distributions of the film. As you can see, this is a Warner Archive Blu-ray. So MGM had nothing to do with this release, pretty much. And considering the fact that Goodbye Girl made over $100 million, I think that Warner Brothers was pretty happy that it became a hit the way it did. Yeah, this was one of the very first comedies to actually get over $100 million at the box office. Marsha Mason in that Subaru outfit. I mean, that's very, very 70s right there. Whoop-de-doo for my Subaru. I actually owned a Subaru Forester at one time. I really like Subaru more than most other car companies. And I like this. This is really cute. Where, he goes up to the Japanese businessmen who are, they run the Subaru lot and everything and said, no, 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 you want to hold on to that girl. She's really great. And then they're like, oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And now we're at a strip club. Richard Dreyfuss, he said that he managed to get a job, but all he could say was that it was in the entertainment field. Of course, with Lucy there, he's not going to exactly say what he's doing, but yeah. The light and the smoke machine. I mean, God, it's erotic acts. Yeah. So he becomes the doorman of the strip club. Now, it should be mentioned that this, of course, was filmed at a time when New York City had a massive red light district. Seriously, like on 42nd Street, they would have, all these old projection booths with the sticky floors and everything. I mean, it was a very, very different time. I mean, I just mentioned Taxi Driver, and, you look at a movie like Taxi Driver and you think, wow, New York actually looked like this at one point in time? Yeah, it did. It absolutely did. In fact, later on in late July, I will be doing an audio commentary for my favorite comedy of all time, which is a movie called Night Shift, starring Henry Winkler and Michael Keaton. And Henry Winkler actually appeared in a few posters earlier on in The Goodbye Girl, if you remember. But I'm going to be doing Night Shift later on this summer, and I'm really looking forward to that. Come here, you little twerp. You don't want to see a guy get his little guy get his face busted in. Well, yeah, apparently they do. All right, we are very close to the 1 hour and 19-minute mark here. 1 hour and 19 minutes. So we have approximately 31 minutes left to go in The Goodbye Girl for anybody who is watching. As far as the reception for The Goodbye Girl is concerned, Roger Ebert gave the film a mostly favorable review, awarding it 3 stars out of 4. He was unimpressed with Marsha Mason's performance and the character as written, calling it hardly ever sympathetic. Now, here again, I've seen reactions to this. I've heard reactions to this. It does take time to warm to her character, but I do think that we eventually warm up to her by the time that she gives the money back to Richard Dreyfuss and everything. I think she does eventually grow into a likable character near the end. It just takes a while, to be perfectly honest. However, Roger Ebert praised Richard Dreyfuss and cited his Richard III scenes as the funniest in a movie since Mel Brooks staged Springtime for Hitler. Roger Ebert criticized the beginning of the film as awkward at times and never quite involving, but enjoyed its conclusion so much that we almost forgot our earlier reservations, unquote. Gene Siskel awarded an identical 3-star grade and said, quote, make no mistake about it. The very best thing about The Goodbye Girl is the character of Elliot Garfield as played by Richard Dreyfuss, a character that comes very close to Dreyfuss's own self and profession-centered lifestyle. But like Dreyfuss himself, Elliot Garfield, who initially comes off as a pushy, prickly type, ultimately wins you over. Vincent Canby of the New York Times found the film to be, quote, exhausting without being much fun, and, quote, relentlessly wisecracked. Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times lauded The Goodbye Girl as the best and most blissfully satisfying romantic comedy of the year, and then some. Arthur D. Murphy of Variety called the film, quote, another feather in Herbert Ross's directorial cap, with Dreyfuss giving his best screen performance to date. Gary Arnold of the Washington Post wrote that the film, quote, evolves into the most satisfying comedies Simon has written directly for the movies. One tolerates the plot mechanics for the sake of the genuinely amusing aspects of his script, the bright remarks, and the distinctive or appealing character traits that provide good performance with live ammunition. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker was negative, however, commenting, quote, it's not Neil Simon's one-liners that get you down in The Goodbye Girl, it's his two-liners. The snappiness of the exchanges is so forced, it's almost macabre. I disagree with you there, Pauline Kael. David Anson of Newsweek wrote, it's pure formula, and Simon plays it straight, all cards on the table, with the conservative professionalism of a gambler used to winning. As directed by the ubiquitous Herbert Ross, The Goodbye Girl is a modest, bittersweet comedy that will delight Simon fans and leave his critics staunchly unconverted. And of course, it holds a 79% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a bit low, if you ask me. But it was nominated for Best Picture, lost to Annie Hall. Yeah, this was the 50th Academy Awards, actually, that this film was up for. This was, of course, the famous year that Annie Hall won Best Picture, but Star Wars won the most Oscars. It won 7, as a matter of fact. But The Goodbye Girl would get Best Actor. Best Supporting Actress and Best Supporting Actor would both go to Julia for Jason Robards and Vanessa Redgrave, specifically. But yeah, The Turning Point, it was nominated for 11 Oscars, didn't win one. It did not win one Oscar for Herbert Ross. And like I said, The Goodbye Girl only got Best Actor. So, Okay, we're 1 hour and 24 minutes in. So we're reaching the climax of the movie where Richard Dreyfuss and Marsha Mason will finally, after months of bickering, after months of getting on each other's backs and everything, they are actually going to have a genuine romantic date and eventually end up in bed together. That's really cute. This is a sleeping child. Just kiss her and then go up to the roof for a special private party. Yes, indeed. Yeah, Quinn Cummings really is adorable there. Really is. Do I prefer The Goodbye Girl over Annie Hall when it comes to, the two romantic comedies of '77? That's a tough call for me. I think that Annie Hall is the better written movie. I think in terms of structure, I think in terms of just overall uniqueness, because here again, it's a romantic comedy where the two leads do not end up together at the end, sort of like with Roman Holiday. And I think they're two of the greatest romantic comedies ever made. This one is unabashedly romantic, and it's unabashedly old-fashioned in its approach to romantic comedy. I mean, Annie Hall was, of course, the modern romantic comedy, while Goodbye Girl, was very, reminiscent of like the 30s and 40s. I mean, and we mentioned Bogart Slept Here. But here he's channeling Fred Astaire. Even Ginger was nervous the first time she danced with me. Yeah, this is a really, really romantic scene. Yeah, I mean, Dreyfuss and Mason, I think, are actually very well matched here. I mean, here again, De Niro and Mason, I just can't really buy that. And not to say that Robert De Niro couldn't have pulled it off. I mean, at least the comedy. I mean, he might have pulled it off, but I don't know about romantic leading man material. I just don't see it with Robert De Niro. They saw Richard III. They said if you could do that, you could do anything. Yep, exactly. And of course, after The Goodbye Girl, Richard Dreyfuss could in fact do anything at that point. But the weird thing is he did a movie called The Big Fix, which I've never seen. It's one of the few films in his entire filmography that I haven't seen. He did that right after The Goodbye Girl, and unfortunately, because of his experiences with drugs, unfortunately, it just derailed his career for almost a decade. I mean, he had made a few films in that time, like Whose Life Is It Anyway, which I mentioned before. But he really didn't make a comeback until 1986 when he did Down and Out in Beverly Hills with Bette Midler. And then, of course, he did Stakeout with Emilio Estevez, Tin Men with Danny DeVito. What About Bob with Bill Murray? He was hot again. I mean, he made all these hit comedies. I remember I was such a fan of his in high school that I actually went to see the new film that he did called Night Falls on Manhattan, starring Andy Garcia, which I just actually got a DVD copy of a couple months ago, and I plan to return to that very soon. I was the only one in the theater to actually see Night Falls on Manhattan because it completely bombed. And here again, the only reason why I went to see it was because Richard Dreyfuss was in it. I really love this scene. I mean, this is one of my favorite scenes in any romantic comedy. I mean, it's very, very touching, very moving. Dave Grusin's score here again. Icing on the cake. Icing on the cake. And what she says here is very true. Yeah, I think Richard Dreyfuss is ready for bed now. Are we going to sleep together tonight? Of all the most upfront girls, you are the most upfrontest. Yes. Yes, very, very, very true. Mm-hmm. But of course, she relays that whole story of meeting Tony DeForest after one of his performances, and she stood out there like a groupie and everything. I know Neil Simon heard all this from somewhere. I don't think this is Marsha Mason, her character, her as a person in any way. But I know that Neil Simon got all these experiences from somewhere. And of course, Quinn Cummings, knowing exactly what's going on, is a wee bit jealous. A wee bit jealous about this relationship which is developed between Elliot and Paula. And she's obviously not showing her amusement. I've quoted Richard Dreyfuss from this movie many times. Even these off the cuff lines like, "Hey, did you hear this kid Lindbergh is about to fly the Atlantic? Who do you think is going to play in the movie?" Richard Dreyfuss could have played Charles Lindbergh. I mean, why not? I mean, why not? Seriously. I mean, Richard Dreyfuss could do anything. Good makeup around his eye, showcasing when he got got punched the night before. Any buttered toast? And, Paula, here's the thing. I mean, of course, Roger Ebert and others complain about her character not being likable. I completely understand her conflicted feelings about this situation because she has a history. And that history is basically clouding her judgment, her rationale, her logic, everything right now. She just doesn't know if this is going to work or not, and even if they should even continue going with it. But of course, Richard Dreyfuss is genuine. He's actually genuine about this, and he truly does really like Marsha Mason and wants to be with her. Because he doesn't plan on leaving New York anytime soon. He likes the situation that they have here. Why complicate things? Why go? Why not go further with it? What's the problem? But of course, he's going to call her out right here and tell her, hey, now I'm beginning to suspect why those guys left. It's because of you and your attitude when it comes to these relationships. A lot of weirdos in this neighborhood. Exactly. Yeah, the Super Bowl of romance. You lose 1 point for burping your wine. And of course, they drop another Shakespeare play here, "The Taming of the Shrew." I'm not really. I've never been a big fan of either Elizabeth Taylor or Richard Burton, but I got to admit that the 1967 film version of The Taming of the Shrew is really good. But still, the best adaptation of Taming of the Shrew is really 10 Things I Hate About You, which is the teen version with Heath Ledger in it. One large pain in the arse. And I wasn't expecting horse's rectum to come out of his mouth right here, but yeah, evidently it does. Personally, madam, I think you blew it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. We are now an hour and 34 minutes. 1 hour, 34 minutes. We have approximately 16 minutes left to go. But anyway, I was going to go ahead and share right now my plan for the summer as far as audio commentaries are concerned. What I plan on doing is a audio commentary every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. Just for the summer. I can't say for sure about after that. But for the summer, I do want to do commentaries 3 days a week. On Friday night, tomorrow night, I will be doing an audio commentary on the 1981 Best Picture winner, Chariots of Fire, starring Ben Cross, Ian Charleson, Nigel Havers, and Alice Krieg, with guest stars Lindsay Anderson, Dennis Christopher, Nigel Davenport, Brad Davis, and Sir John Gielgud. So this will be tomorrow night at 9 p.m., and I'm very much looking forward to doing it. I haven't seen Chariots of Fire. Excuse me. I haven't seen Chariots of Fire since high school, so believe me, I'm very much looking forward to doing that. On Saturday night, I will be doing Boxcar Bertha, Martin Scorsese's sophomore effort from 1972. That'll be my 50th anniversary audio commentary for the weekend. And of course, that film stars Barbara Hershey. I've never seen it, but what I'm going to be doing is a double feature actually on Saturday night. I'm going to do Boxcar Bertha, at 9 p.m. And then immediately afterward, on the same stream, I will be doing Martin Scorsese's very first movie called Who's That Knocking on My Door, starring Harvey Keitel, which came out in 1967. Roger Ebert saw it and championed it, praised Martin Scorsese to the heavens. And that, of course, obviously led to Boxcar Bertha for Roger Corman and New World Pictures. And then eventually, Scorsese would eventually make Mean Streets with Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel, which that was the movie that officially put him on the map. So we will do, on Saturday night, we will do Boxcar Bertha and Who's That Knocking on My Door. Next Thursday night, I will be doing another obscure film. This one I have never seen before, and I'm actually taking a massive... this is going to be a real challenge to me. But next Thursday night at 9 p.m., and all these commentaries will be at 9 p.m., by the way, I will be doing a commentary for A Day in the Death of Joe Egg, which is based on a British play starring Alan Bates and Janet Suzman and directed by Peter Medak. And this Blu-ray, which only came out a couple years ago, it actually has a commentary with the director and an interview with the playwright. So I'm very much looking forward into diving into that as well. But like I said, for the rest of the year, I will be doing these films that came out from the Ladd Company, mostly in the 1980s. After Chariots of Fire, I will be doing Outland with Sean Connery. Looker with Albert Finney, directed by Michael Crichton. Night Shift, obviously, directed by Ron Howard and starring Michael Keaton and Henry Winkler. And finally, Body Heat, starring William Hurt and Kathleen Turner. But I will also be doing Blade Runner, Once Upon a Time in America. Yes, I will be doing an audio commentary for all 4 hours of Once Upon a Time in America. The first 2 Police Academy movies, the 2 Brady Bunch movies from the 90s, as well as Braveheart, Gone Baby Gone, and Star 80, and several other ones. So basically 24 films that the Ladd Company put out. Of the 26 that they eventually distributed, I will be doing 24 of those movies, including the ones I just showed you here. So that will be my summer-long project, is to do audio commentaries for all of the Ladd Company releases. And so we're about to enter the third act of The Goodbye Girl here. Richard Dreyfuss has apparently joined this improvisation troupe. And very much working actors, working in a dressing room where there's very little. Now, here we have a uncredited, unbilled cameo by British actor Nicole Williamson. And Nicole Williamson I know best as the Gnome King in Return to Oz. But he actually has a very long career, in terms of stage and screen. And he passed away in 2011 at the age of 75. And I was going to say, for Return to Oz, there's a documentary available on Vimeo, Vimeo, called Remembering Return to Oz. If you are a fan of that movie, you need to check out that documentary. Directed by Aaron Schultz and produced by Aaron Plessentine. You really need to check it out. But yeah, Nicole Williamson just showed up for basically 3 minutes there. But he was described by playwright John Osborne as the greatest actor since Marlon Brando. And he was also described by Samuel Beckett as, quote, touched by genius, and viewed by many critics as quote, the Hamlet of his generation during the late 1960s. And in fact, he did play Hamlet in a film version from 1969. He was nominated for the BAFTA in 1968 for The Before's Gun and Inadmissible Evidence. And he also won the prize for San Sebastian for Best Actor for Laughter in the Dark. But like I said, I know him mostly as the Gnome King from Return to Oz, as well as the Goodbye Girl. But he also played Little John and Robin and Marion, as well as Sherlock Holmes in The 7% Solution, written by Nicholas Meyer. And his very last film role was actually, he played Cagliostro. Yeah, Cagliostro in the adaptation of the comic book Spawn from 1997, which I actually ended up despising, despite the fact that, John Leguizamo is a very talented guy. But man, seeing him that year in both Spawn and The Pest, I mean, you want to talk about some horrible, horrible movies. Oh my God. I love Marsha's reaction there to, Richard Dreyfuss's affection. But she, of course, here again, understandably, is very cynical at him leaving and doesn't believe that he is going to come back just because there's a pattern, there's a history. She doesn't think that he is going to come back. That's my third time up as cheerleader. Yes, we know, Paula, we know. But Richard Dreyfuss, I mean, I believe him. I do believe his character is being very genuine here, and that he has no intention of leaving Marsha Mason. Yes, he may be going to another state just to film a movie, just because, look, anybody who got an offer like that, would not pass it up for anything in the world. I mean, if there was any scene that probably garnered Dreyfuss the Oscar, it was probably this one. Because, I mean, as Marsha Mason says, right here, in a very prophetic way, if you're ever nominated for an Oscar, I'll be sure to root for you. And he eventually does win. See, I mean, her character arc is actually, I think, very satisfying, where, she has to overcome, she has to put on her bootstraps. She has to go out there and get work. She has to take care of her daughter. I mean, come on. I mean, she's come a long way since the beginning of the movie. And that's what I'm saying, is that I don't think that Marsha Mason is given enough credit for this performance. I do think it was intentional to make her character less likable than Richard Dreyfuss's Elliot, but hey, it works. It completely works in terms of them coming together, accepting each other's flaws, accepting each other's realities and everything, and they do genuinely fall in love with each other. Going to New York and be successful would be the worst thing that ever happened to a guy. Yeah. And of course, the very, very moving moment where he opens the door and sees Lucy all sad in the hallway. Yeah. So long, kid. Oh, man. And of course, the audience at this point is like, no, don't leave him. It's like, well, hey, Nicole Williamson came into my dressing room and said, hey, he wants me to be in a movie. So I said, yes, okay. Now, we're coming up here. This is the very last scene of The Goodbye Girl. And of course, we need to talk about David Gates and Bread. Bread was a band that David Gates had fronted in the 1970s. David Gates, of course, hails from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And on July 25th, 1969, Bread appeared in concert for the first time at the Aquarius Theater in Hollywood, opening for the Flying Burrito Brothers. And basically, Bread would be around for about 7 years and would put out a number of albums, which became many of them, became hits on the Billboard charts and everything. And they became known for songs like The Guitar Man, Sweet Surrender, and Aubrey on the adult contemporary chart. By this time, though, David Gates was not, the group had already broken up by this time. And so the four members of Bread, along with session guitarist Dean Parks, toured throughout the spring of '77 to support their comeback album. And after a short break, they commenced the tour's third leg that summer without Griffin, whom Gates failed to invite after further rising tensions and Griffin's worsening substance abuse troubles. They ended the year with no further plans to record as a group. And of course, The Goodbye Girl came out in November of 1977. The song The Goodbye Girl, written and performed by David Gates, even though it was a hit on the Billboard chart, and even though it became, from what I understand, when people walked out of the theater of The Goodbye Girl right here, they were either humming the song or singing the song. And considering the fact that the song did not get an Academy Award nomination in 1977, it completely blows my mind. Song The Goodbye Girl, written and performed by David Gates. Yes. And we end on the shot of New York City in the rain, as we started out before. I mean, Richard Dreyfuss arrived when it was raining, and he left when it was raining. So, yeah. And here we have our cast. Robert Costanzo is the liquor store salesman. Excuse me. I need a drink, actually. I haven't taken a drink this whole commentary. So, Among the Richard III cast there, we saw the name Powers Booth as well. He went on to do a number of huge films. And he also he had his first speaking role actually in the Al Pacino movie Cruising, where he described the different color handkerchiefs that people would wear to the leather bar scene, because Al Pacino was looking for a serial killer of gay men at that time in that movie Cruising, directed by William Friedkin. Filmed at the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios and on locations in New York City. And that is the conclusion of Herbert Ross's The Goodbye Girl, a Rastar feature, distributed by Warner Brothers. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and joining me for The Goodbye Girl. Like I said, tomorrow night at 9 p.m., I will be doing Chariots of Fire. And then Saturday night at 9 p.m., I will be doing Martin Scorsese's Boxcar Bertha, as well as his debut film, Who's That Knocking on My Door? Until then, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Hope you all have a great evening, and thank you very much.